Today on Quest, healer and life coach, Britney Taylor. Life is a quest for logic and reason. It is a quest to find balance between science and faith. Life is a quest for knowledge and understanding. But most importantly, it's a quest for personal discovery. Whatever your quest, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Welcome to Quest. Hi everyone, I'm your host, Todd Fischer, and this is Season 2 of Quest. For those of you that might be new listeners, let me tell you a little about me. I'm the founder of Metacortex and the author of the best-selling book, Metacortex: The Grand Design. I'm a philosopher, a theorist, and a metaphysicist. I'm a perpetual pupil of theology and an expert in comparative religious study. I've also extensively researched the mind-body connection, anatomy, and physiology. I'm a researcher and a storyteller. And in order to tell this story, the research is necessary, and part of the research is the search. And that brings us to why I created the Quest podcast. A quest is a search for something, and this podcast will show you how we know what we know through interviews with people that have incredible stories of dedication and perseverance. To me, curiosity is part of what makes us human, and there's still so much we don't know. There's joy in discovery. It's what drives us. It's our quest. Today on Quest, my guest is Vancouver-based healer, life coach, and overall general spreader of positivity, Britney Taylor. I think you'll really enjoy today's podcast. Have a listen. Hi, Britney. Welcome to the Quest podcast.
Hi, Todd. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So we were just, before we started recording, we just established you're my first Canadian guest. So
Yay. I love it.
I can welcome a new nation to my Quest world. You're in near Vancouver, I think you said.
Yes,
So,
I'm actually in Abbotsford. It's about an hour outside of Vancouver, Canada. And yeah, excited to make you Quest worldwide.
Vancouver's beautiful part of the country. So you're very lucky to be up there. How's COVID up there in Canada right now? Are you all experiencing what we're experiencing here?
I think it's getting to that point, maybe. Yeah, but I don't really notice it. I'm at home with the baby all the time. I've just recently become a mom 6 months ago, so I don't really notice, and I don't watch the news, so I'm not really sure what's going on.
Well, what I like about the brand you've built for yourself is you spread so much positivity, and it's like I can't be on Facebook or Instagram, it seems, without seeing a Britney Taylor post show up someplace. So it's great. I love the message that you're spreading, and you have some really great classes and workshops and different things you offer, and we're going to get into all that today.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I love the internet, and it would probably be harder for me to not post on social media every day than to post. So that's why I'm there all the time. It's just become like the most joyful part of me, and obviously it's my business too, but I love the internet.
So you kind of define yourself as a healer and a life coach, but let's kind of go back and tell me who Britney Taylor is. Give me your backstory. How did you get to where you are today?
So it started probably when I was about 15 years old, and I found astrology, and that became a huge passion of mine, learning about the signs, and there's a much deeper study that goes along with that than most people are even aware of. And I became obsessed with that. And then that kind of led into me as a teenager finding books on spirituality and, books on like the nature of souls and reality, and all from this very spiritual context. And that just became a total obsession. And I really feel like that actually saved me from a dark period in my teenage years. I was kind of going through that phase of partying and peer pressure, drinking drugs. And I found this other side of life, this, deep love for, life, God, and this connection to my soul. And I really feel like it pulled me out of this darkness and into this new way of life, this new joyful way of life. And now that's 10 years ago, and I'm still doing the same things. I'm still obsessed with the spiritual side of life, and now I'm teaching on it. So that's kind of how I got into it. But really, I mean, those books that I found back then, like in my teens, they just fell off the shelf. Like it really was divinely guided. And in my perspective, it was just like I was meant to be on this path.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, I think one of the things I think I saw in one of your biographies was you mentioned having self-worth issues when you were younger. Tell my
Yes.
listeners exactly like what kinds of self-worth issues did you have? Were they personal appearance issues? Were they rejections you had from
Yes.
men?
Yes.
Tell me some of the things you went through, because I think that'll
All the
really resonate
things.
with my
Yeah.
listeners. Yeah.
Definitely both of those things. I did have personal appearance issues. I felt ugly. I felt unworthy. I felt like, the men that I was interested in weren't interested in me. And that brought up all kinds of feelings of sadness and heartbreak, and just like really this deep down feeling of like, being wrong in my body, like that. Yeah, there just was something wrong with me, right? Which is that feeling of insecurity that I think most of us have at some point. And yeah, the work that I do has really healed that. And that really is a miracle. And now, so I like to teach others how to have that same shift.
Do you think that when people have problems with, say maybe a culture of people that they're with, maybe you're with people that party, they always say this thing, if you hang out with a bunch of criminals, you'll become a criminal. If you hang out with potheads, you'll become a
Yeah.
pothead. Is that thing? Is it the circle of people you're around that you have to escape from, or is it the person themselves, do you think?
Well, what I actually think is that, I mean, yes, the people around you can influence you, but here I was, and, I was surrounded by these partying kind of people, but I ended up going on a totally different path. So I think there are some people who are, I don't know, like strong enough to be around a group and then still find their own individuality and find their own way. But it does take probably more effort if you're hanging around with a lot of people who aren't on the same path as you, but it can be done.
I often wonder that because, I've seen people move across the country to escape kind of the toxic environment they're in. Maybe it's with family, maybe it's with the people they hang out with, but yet they still
Yeah.
find the same people when they move. So that's why I can't help but wonder, is it the people or is it the individual? And
I think
I'm
it's
just always
you. Yeah.
curious. Yeah. And
Definitely.
so,
And I believe in like the law of attraction as well. That's another thing I teach on. And people can do that. They move across the whole country, or they leave a relationship because they want to get away from that issue, right? And then they end up attracting the exact same thing. So I think that we do have a lot more power in these situations that we realize from within, like from changing our own being.
what was your childhood like with your parents? I think I saw in your biography that you would witness your parents fighting and they eventually got divorced. What was your home life like back then? Did you grow up spiritual or religious? What was your household like?
There wasn't really a religion in my family. I mean, we believed in God, but we didn't go to church. My parents were very good parents. I was an only child, so they were just totally like obsessed with me in a way. I was like totally spoiled. But yeah, they did fight, and then they eventually got divorced when I was 3, and I felt a lot of that. I think kids really do feel the emotions of their parents, and I think that really did affect me, but ended up, being a very positive thing. I've gone back in hypnosis and dealt with a lot of these childhood things. And one of the main reasons why I think that happened in my childhood was to learn about relationships and learn about, people and childhood traumas and things like that. And so I really do believe everything in our childhoods, no matter how difficult, it ultimately is for a lesson or for a purpose. And then some of these things we end up teaching on. So I'm really grateful for that. And I do have amazing parents. We're like best friends right now. They are obsessed with my son, and they're just like the best grandparents, and no hard feelings or anything. But yeah, childhood there's always something, right? We all have our own issue to kind of deal with, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And when you started to get into reading these books and astrology and the things that started to build the foundation of what you would become today, that was what helped you kind of overcome all that kind of that darkness and that ugliness of your past and help you
Absolutely.
overcome
Yes.
the self-worth. So how do you take those learning lessons, those tools you acquired, and turn it into the business that you have today?
So I guess it just happened really naturally. I mean, I started out making YouTube astrology videos, and I didn't even think of this as a business. This was just something I needed to get out of my system. I just needed to talk about the things I was passionate about, and I knew that YouTube existed. So that's kind of how I got started back in 2014. And then I ended up doing some healing sessions. I'm a healer of many different modalities, and I started out doing some healing sessions. And then, really, what it was is I just started to find people in this online coaching world, doing online courses. I ended up hiring a coach and taking a few courses, and then realizing, wow, this is what I could be doing. I can be teaching all of this stuff that's really healed me. And that's kind of how it shifted into that. But it's just really like an amazing world online. Like, you really can do anything with these platforms. And I'm just like, I'm so in awe of it, really, like, that I just get to do this. It's so amazing.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Social media has definitely changed how the world connects, and it's definitely made the world
Right?
smaller in that regard. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm curious, moving forward in your life, do you find that that still keeping that positive attitude, does that still require maintenance to do? Do things still
Yes.
sneak in? Tell me about that part. Yeah.
For sure. I think that it is a lifelong thing to choose to be a positive person and to choose to, like, live by what you know to be true, right? And it is something, like, I mean, daily I do a practice for my mindset to keep believing in the impossible or the, miraculous. I do work every single day to stay in that state, but I do find that it does just become a part of you. Like, I don't struggle with the same insecurities that I struggled with when I began this spiritual work, right? Like, a lot of those have just kind of shifted and totally dissipated, really.
Right.
But now it's like there's always new things that come up. So I mean, in a way, I do feel like you grow as a person. You don't have to do as much work, but at the same time, there's always more to heal. And that's something I talked about, I think, yesterday on one of my videos. I was saying, you're always going to feel like there's more to be healed. So you might as well just start living as the person you want to be now as you do your healing. You can still be living as you're working on yourself.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I think people that are practitioners of things like this, I think a lot of people think that they can take a class somewhere, they can take a yoga class, they can learn meditation, they can take whatever self-help thing that they want, and then their problems are fixed. Not realizing
Yeah.
that you have to maintain these things. It's like there's no limit for self-improvement.
Yeah, that's
There's
what I
no,
thought too. I was the one, I was like, after this course, I'm going to be so healed. And then that moment never came.
yeah. I mean, you'll never close the book on living that better
Yes.
life, having that better physical and mental state that you need to be in, that attunement. You will constantly be improving on that. And I think people need to remember that as they take new courses and they learn more things, that you can still continue to learn more.
Yes,
And you certainly have to
always.
maintain, certainly have to maintain for sure.
Yes.
You're also a hypnotherapist, is that right?
Yes, I am. That was such an amazing experience learning that work. I love going deep into the subconscious mind because, yeah, like what I learned in hypnotherapy school is, like, I think it's 95% of all of our emotions and beliefs are from the subconscious mind, which is below our conscious awareness. So it's very interesting when people try to change their life and they don't see much change, is because they haven't quite gone deep enough to that subconscious level. So I love to always bring that in. I always teach in my courses, I always do like a meditation or kind of a hypnosis at the start of every one of my trainings, just so that everything that I teach really sinks in. Um, Yeah, super, super fun stuff. But yeah, I don't actually practice like hypnosis sessions anymore for clients. Like I don't have people over because I find like the online world is just so much more unlimited. And I love to just kind of bring that work into everything that I teach.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So when people want to seek you out, what can they expect to get from what you offer? You have different courses that you offer. You have different types of things that you do. Let's talk about some of the things that you get into.
For sure. Yeah. So really when people find me, like my intention is that they connect deeper with their soul. So I'm just a guide into their own soul and into their own soul states of like unconditional love, happiness, joy, confidence. But it can come in like many different forms, right? I've helped a lot of women around relationships. I've helped a lot of people connect to their soul gifts and, understand what they're really meant to be doing on this planet, like soul purpose. I do so many things. These kind of questions are always hard, but really, I think like when people find me, my intention and what I really see a lot of is like people just feel this sense of like truth and knowing. And it's not because of what I'm saying, it's just it allows them to connect to their soul's truth.
Sure, for sure. So let's talk about the soul for a minute.
Mhm.
How do you define the soul?
So for me, like we're humans in these human physical bodies, right? But we have this energetic side to us, and we all have this. We all have a soul that's actually connected with other realms, with like whether you want to call it heaven or, yeah, these other spaces where, yeah, they're not physical, it's non physical. And so our soul is like this higher aspect of ourself that understands the wisdom behind our life's challenges and understands why we're here. And I really do believe that all beings choose to come to earth to learn lessons in this physical body, but we aren't wholly physical, right? We come from energy, and that's really what the soul is this energy part of us that is wiser.
Sure. And when we die, where does that soul go, in your opinion?
It goes up to, well, heaven, but I don't believe it's like quite in the Christian sense like what heaven is, but I do believe we go to this like place of infinite love and connect back to like, yeah, other family members or soulmates and guides, and yeah, we go back to the energy side fully.
Do we reincarnate?
Absolutely.
I noticed like one of the pages on your website, you mentioned things that you would cover in some of the things that you did. And one was accessing the pre-incarnation agreement. And I thought, oh, this
Yes.
is interesting because I felt like you were probably going to talk to me about a cyclical type of thing.
Yeah.
And I wrote a book that covers this a great deal. I use science to start to back up spirituality and religion. And the
Oh, wow.
first hundred pages is about the science behind the soul.
That is
And so
amazing. I
I
would love to read your book.
certainly have my own opinions on it, which I feel are parallel to yours. Um,
Very cool.
but I saw that, accessing the pre-incarnation agreement. Tell me about that. Tell me your idea of what this is?
Yeah, so what I've experienced actually in hypnosis, this is where I learned about this concept, is like we all choose to come to this planet at this time in this specific body with these specific parents and soulmates. And we have these kind of agreements that we came to this earth at this time to live out. And it doesn't mean we're going to necessarily live them. I do believe like we have to choose to be on the soul path. But yeah, something that I found very interesting about that is I actually talk about this in some of my videos and stuff that I've gone into hypnosis and done what's called, I don't know if you've heard of, I think his name is Michael Newton, and he has these books, Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls. So I've done this work where I've gone into this kind of between life state. So yeah, he does what's called life between lives hypnosis. And I've had a session of this, and this is where I really learned a lot of this stuff and understood a lot of these concepts. It was like I went back to me agreeing to come to this lifetime and what I would work on, and the kind of soul that I was. And that was a very cool experience that I try to open people's minds to, because so often people can think, oh, like they're just randomly thrown into Earth, and I totally don't believe that. I think it's all very planned and purposeful.
For sure. I agree with that too. Did you ever see the Jane Roberts books, The Education of Oversoul 7, or any of those? Are you familiar with those books?
You know what? I'm actually just getting into that. She does Seth, right? Or
Yeah,
she
Seth.
channels.
Yeah.
See, I actually
All,
just got into my first Seth book probably last week, so I don't know
yeah.
too much about it, but I'm all about that kind of thing.
Oh, the Seth Speaks stuff is great. The Education of
Hmm.
Oversoul 7 is incredible. And it explains the oversoul process, which actually exists in many different spiritualities, many different philosophies, religious philosophies as well.
Wow.
And it's interesting because in Buddhist philosophy, you keep coming back, you keep coming back, you keep reliving, you keep reliving, you keep reliving until you finally do it right. And
Wow.
there are many other religions and spiritualities, philosophies that carry the same belief. In fact, there are a lot of Christian scholars that also believe that reincarnation plays into Christianity, only it's been kind of veiled through the years.
Wow.
And they've sort of like, it really comes down uh, to just kind of how preachers preach and how they choose to talk about the idea of heaven and hell. But there's a lot of religious scholars that believe that hell is just not being in the presence of God or being in the source. So hell would be having to come back to earth and do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again and keep
Yeah.
living these lives. And this may be boring the crap out of you. So
No, I
forgive me
love this. I love talking about all this.
but I love getting into taking the deep dive in some of these podcasts. But even but even the Jewish believe in the theory of the Guff, and that the Guff is a housing of souls, and that there were a finite amount of souls that were actually created within the Guff, and their kind of their end of days theory is that you'll have set these 7 signs, and the 7th sign is the first child born without a soul, meaning that the Guff is now empty. So a
Wow.
lot of what we have in Christianity duplicates the idea of the 7 signs, only it's done in Revelations, and it's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So it's a lot of the same stuff being covered again. But the interesting
Totally.
idea is that these souls likely come down, live out their life on earth, achieve some form of purpose that they're supposed to do, go back up into the Guff where there's a judgment, and either you've done everything right and you can move on and not have to live in that cyclical hell, which is kind of how the Buddhists think. The enlightenment is to
Yep.
get out of that cyclical thing that they're in, and or you come back down and you do it again. And part of that is kind of that pre-incarnation agreement. Okay, what do I need to get done this time? And
Yeah.
and obviously there's no science to back this part up, but what would that be? Is everyone supposed to live their lives as a man, as a woman, as someone who died in war, as someone who contributes some great work of art? Like, who knows what that purpose is, but it's something that you need to come back down and do. And a lot of what we have today from a scientific perspective is so many past life experiences with people, more than we've ever had before.
Yep.
And there's a lot of science going to back up the idea that these souls recycling back down to earth is a real thing. This is happening. There are memories people
Totally.
have that they should never have in a million years that they have, and they're becoming more recent. And my
Yep.
fear, and I'm working on the math on this right now for a project in the future, but let's say, for instance, there were 10 billion souls that were created in the Guff. Okay. So right now we're at 7.5 billion people on the planet, but people are
Okay.
constantly dying, going back up into the Guff, waiting in a queue, coming back down, living a life, dying, going back up into the Guff. This thing keeps going like this. Well, it's like an hourglass filled with sand that you just can't turn over quick enough. you know it's like you
Yeah.
keep turning it, it empties and empties, and eventually you just can't turn it over fast enough. And that's where we're going, because there's a 10-year-old child in Cincinnati right now that has the memories of a firefighter in Chicago that died 10 years earlier. And the weird thing
Yep.
about this is that if you look at the span of people that have been talking about past life experiences, this has been there were people in the Old West that had past life experiences. People in the 70s in the United States, when they started to find people with these past life experiences, they had the thoughts of people that were in feudal Japan or in old Europe,
Yeah.
like that's what they had. And within literally 50 years, now people are having the memories of recently deceased people. So you can tell from
Yeah.
that the guff is emptying faster. And that's what I find that really interesting. And I also think that plays into a lot of people and identity issues, because you may have literally just lived your life as a woman and now you're back in a man's body. And I think that there's a
Yeah.
lot of things, and there's a lot of, in psychology, can't really support this in any way, why people are feeling this way with identity issues. And many
I was
times,
actually recently just thinking about that, about how, we have this thing where people feel like they're in the wrong body. And I totally believe it's because they've had maybe a recent past life in that other body.
yeah. And there was a time when the soul would stay in the queue for a long time before it would come back down. But now we're so
Yeah.
overpopulated, it's necessary for them to come back down quicker. There's more lives, there's more issues, and there's more confusion. And that's really an interesting facet of it all. Now, there are a lot of people that will I'll get a lot of hate mail on just saying that, on this
Yeah.
podcast. But it's also very unexplained why people feel this way. And the most common thing you hear people talk about is that a lot of times people are influenced by what they see on television or social media. They're influenced by wanting to live their life a certain way by what they see in pop culture. But I don't believe that's the root of this issue. I think the root of this issue is something else, and I think it's on the basis of a soul. But but I love getting a conversation with someone I can talk about a soul as.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
love this so much. This is like everything I just love to talk about. And I completely agree with you that, there is a kind of a quickening, and souls are incarnating like faster and faster. Yeah, we used to spend so much time, I feel like, in the between life state. And now it's like, go, 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 go. And the reason that I feel for that is that we're having this big awakening in humanity right now. And, many old souls, or many like wise light worker healer type souls, are coming down to really help with the evolution of humanity. And I think that it is happening now, and that's why people are being born so much, and there's so much going on right now. That's kind of where I feel about that.
There's a lot of interesting loose uh, um, Buddhist philosophies about when you do achieve your enlightenment, you can still come back if you want to be a teacher. And
Yes, I
that's
love that. I've heard that as well.
and in Christianity and many other religions, actually, guardian angels were essentially this somewhere between what angels were created as and what that human soul is. Only a guardian angel would be that human soul allowed to still come back after they've kind of achieved their own enlightenment. And that's what guardian angel, that's why they're kind of a subcategory of everything, is that once you've done what you're supposed to do, well, you can just move out of all of this cyclical hell if you want and go to heaven or go wherever you need to go, but you can also still come back down and you can still benefit the world. And I think that that's an interesting thing too. But
Totally. Yeah, I love that idea as well. And I can definitely see that. Like, one of the lines in one of my meditations that I always say, like when I'm delivering a meditation, is I say to people, like, you were so excited to come to the planet at this time for this awakening. And how I've always perceived that is like, yes, these are these wise ascended master beings who technically don't have to come, but they want to come because they know that they have this power to like uplift so many other souls. And yeah, I just had that coming through me right now.
I'm curious what you think about this. So I've worked with a lot of people that have done hypnotic therapy. I've seen many regressions. I like to watch I've seen regressions for past lives. I love regressions from UFO abductees. Those are my favorites to participate in. But
Wow.
but I'm curious, do you think it's important to access those past lives? I know you commented on something that you would cover about accessing relevant past lives for healing now. Do you think we should pry into that to dig past that, or
Yes.
is that
So
safe?
what I believe is, like, for me personally, it was necessary. It was what I was guided to do. But for someone who doesn't have the interest or doesn't have the passion and is more interested in just more things of this world, I wouldn't like recommend it's like a must do for everybody. But what I always tell people is like, do what you're feeling guided to do. If you really feel the pull to do this kind of past life work or do some regressions or whatever it is, then absolutely do it. But do I think everybody needs to do it? Not necessarily, right? We all have our own path to the same understandings.
Sure. You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation about your interest in astrology.
Yes.
Tell me about astrology. You know, I've never had an astrology guest on my podcast, and I have to say I honestly don't know a lot about astrology. Tell me why I should believe in astrology.
Okay, yeah. So it's just so much more than people think it is. So you actually have this entire birth chart, and it's based on the very moment that you were born. So you take the birth time and the birthplace and the date and year and everything, and it makes this circle and it makes this chart, and it's based on like where the sun was at the time you were born. That's your sun sign. That's what most people know about. But then you also have a moon sign, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and all this stuff. And it really like goes in depth to personality traits, gifts, challenges, everything like that. And I do think that if someone's feeling called to look at that, it can be very valuable. But it's the same thing with the past life thing. I don't feel that it's needed or necessary. I think that we all have different paths, right? But for me, it definitely had a lot of value for me to understand my astrology chart from such a young age. And I really feel like it helped me understand my purpose and understand like what I was naturally good at and what was going to naturally be a challenge. So yeah, it's definitely fascinating work. It's not something that I spend a lot of time on now because I feel like I'm way more focused on the law of attraction and healing and that kind of stuff. But it definitely served a very valuable purpose in my life.
Sure. I saw that you had a couple courses listed on your website. You had Inner Light Activation, Manifest Your Dream Life School, Awaken Soul
Yep.
School. Tell me about some of these programs, what they're like. How long are these courses? Are they all on Zoom? How do people take these? How often do you offer them? Tell me about what you have going with your courses.
Yeah, so I pretty much do it all very intuitively, like the timing, like how long it's going to be, what the topic is. I really feel like I channel what I'm going to be teaching on, and they all have a very different flavor. But then, I mean, they all probably talk about some of the same things as well. Inner Light is all about self-love. Awaken Soul School is a more general, like connection to soul. Manifesting Your Dream Life School is about manifestation, and they all kind of have their own flavor. But they're like they're like each of my children, you know, my courses. But yeah, it's just really, really fun to be able to teach like so many people in this way. The way that I do it is I do it over like a Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
I do all my courses in a private Facebook group. I go live, I share meditations, I share audios, I share journaling, and then I transfer everything over to like my Teachable website after where they can have access for life. And yeah, I just love it. That's the way that I prefer to take courses. I don't really like Zoom that much for that, but
Yeah.
I know
No, I
other
get
people
it.
do. Yeah.
I get it. Do you, can people hire you privately?
Yes, I do one-on-one coaching as well, where they get actual one-on-one time with me, like calls, and I use the app Voxer where they can kind of check in with me daily and get coaching on the go in between calls, and that's really fun too.
What do you do on days you're not feeling happy?
I don't try to force myself to be happy when I'm not feeling happy. I have a very like specific process that I use when I think there's an emotion that I want to rewire and heal. I have like my own healing method that I kind of do on things, but I don't rush to change a state. I really like allow myself to feel what I'm feeling. And then usually just with that, the emotion will pass, right? I really do believe emotions are like special messengers. So I just don't try to force myself. But if this was like an emotion that was lasting for like a week at a time, I would definitely go in, use my method, rewire it, heal it, and go back and just choose to be my joyful self.
And you feel the same way when it comes to the sadness pattern or the anger pattern? It's the same answer?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. You let them run their course unless they become, too long in duration.
Yeah, I think with anger, anger can definitely pass a lot quicker because I think it's just a really motivating emotion where, like, when I'm feeling anger, I'm like, okay, what am I fired up about? And like, what does this have to show me about my purpose? And that'll usually get me right on track to writing some post or launching another course. It's usually very purposeful there, whereas sadness can sometimes be a little bit more difficult to kind of pinpoint what's going on there. But um, yeah.
Yeah. You've already accomplished so much and you're so young. What's next for Britney Taylor? What should we expect from you in the future? What have you not achieved that you still want to achieve?
I just want to keep going bigger and bigger and bigger, and reach more people. And, maybe one day I'd love to be having my own kind of show or something, whether online. Actually, I haven't even done a podcast yet. That's something that's probably next too. So
Yeah.
just keep on doing the exact same thing I'm doing, but just reaching more people and helping more people. That's really the goal.
What's your daily practice? Do you meditate, do prayer, yoga? What's your everyday?
So it's been a little bit harder with my baby, but I always make time to get some sort of sweat going, so some type of workout, and then I do some form of mindset work, whether it's just picking up a random book off my shelf and reading some inspiring thought, or doing an online course that I'm a part of. I make sure to always put something into my brain that's going to uplift me. And that's pretty much it. Then I do some form of content, right? I'm on there every day writing or doing a video or doing a story or something. And yeah, that's my practice.
That's great. How do people
Yeah.
find you out there on the interwebs and social media?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram as the Britney Taylor, and Facebook, Britney Taylor, YouTube, Britney Taylor. And I do have a website. It's joyoflivingonline.com. But yeah, I'm on my social media platforms every day. I love to talk to people. I love to make connections on there.
Well, great. Brittany, this has been a great interview. I really appreciate
Yes.
you being able to come out and do this. And I hope we
Thank
can
you
stay
so
in
much.
touch and do this again next year. We'll check back in and see how your corner of the globe is going. I'm relying on
Yes.
you to take care of the spiritual health of everyone in the Vancouver metropolitan area.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. We talked about some stuff I had no idea what we were going to talk about, and I just love it. So
Yeah,
thank you.
for sure. But yeah, I love everything you're doing up there. And thanks for coming out today. Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
There you have it. My interview with Britney Taylor. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions this season, be sure to email me at questwithtodd@gmail.com. Later in the year, we'll have a Q&A episode. And sometimes people just have questions for my past guests. Send them this way. We'll get them answered for you. See you next week on Quest. Thank you for listening to Quest. Please be sure to rate and review this podcast. This podcast is produced by Todd Fischer and distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Be sure to visit the official website for the International Association of Metacomics at metacomics.org, or find us on social media for other unique content. And make sure to pick up a copy of the book that started a spiritual revolution, Metacomics: The Grand Design, available for sale online and at most major bookstores.